You're tuned into the Counterflow Podcast, home of dissident voices,
unapproved opinions.
But you gotta get ready.
You ready?
Now here's your host
and humble narrator,
Buck Johnson. Let's go.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. As always, I am your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Lockhart, Texas. Today, our friend, Dr. Michael Christian Kuhn, is back on the show. He was on, goodness, it's been a few months now, with John, his co-host from the Orthodox Health Podcast. Today, it's just myself and Dr. Michael talking about the themes in his new book, Orthodoxy and the Medicine of the Future, rediscovering the healing power of fasting, prayer, and holy tradition. This episode, these topics, the way he intertwines physical, mental, spiritual health from an Orthodox viewpoint and the viewpoint from a doctor, let's face it, is really, really cool. I think you guys are going to enjoy this episode. So without further ado, for the first time solo, but the second time on the show, Dr. Michael Christian Kuhn. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Doing great. How you doing, Buck?
I'm good, man. I'm excited to do this. We'll show them right now. I always like to tease the people that only listen, and that's fair. I do that with shows too sometimes. But if you're watching, you're already seeing the cover of this great book that I had the honor of receiving in the mail a few months, or about a month ago. Orthodoxy and the Medicine of the Future, rediscovering the healing power and fasting, of fasting, prayer, and holy tradition. Now, this was absolutely not on purpose, but I just happened to have this sitting next to me because I was on my friend Kara Mosier's podcast recently, and we were talking about this book, and dare I say, maybe you borrowed some influence from Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future by Father Seraphim Rose. Having said all of that, that's my little intro for us. You, Dr. Michael, give an intro for you, talk about the show, what you do, everything pertinent to this topic in your book that we're going to talk about, and we are going to jump in.
Absolutely. Actually, a fun little sidebar on that. I had a delay on getting my author's copies of the book because when I initially input it into Amazon, just having said Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future so many times over the last 8 years, I actually input it as that. So for a brief day, you could have bought a bootleg copy of Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future by me. But no, I got that fixed. I got that cleared up real quick. I was like, oh no. But having said that, yes, I'm Dr. Mike. I'm a functional nutritionist, and I prefer saying health detective just because nutritionist usually gives the implications of I'm gonna help you lose weight. And sure, that's great for a lot of people, but it's not necessarily the best thing for everybody. I'd rather dive into the roots causes of what's going on physically, mentally, and spiritually. But let's be clear, that's going to be with your spiritual father as the primary consult. But I'm there, to help at least see where that's causing issues on your physical and mental health. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I've been doing this for almost 15 years now at this point. But I grew up in a household of, my father was a naturopath. So I've always been in that alternative, weird health space. And I ended up going and get my master's in nutrition because at the time I was competing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and stumbled across a book called The Paleo Solution by Rob Wolf because it was published by the same MMA authors and everything, which I found out later that our mutual friend, Rachel Wilson, knew Rob very personally, which was kind of cool that we talked. Yeah, and dude's brilliant. I hope he comes home at some point, but he's still in his agnostic phase, I feel like. But that was the beginning days of the whole paleo, primal, ancestral health thing. And I was there, I bought in full wholesale right then and there and lived that way for quite a long time, intermittent fasted for solid 9 years. And then around that time, I finished my master's in nutrition and got accepted to my doctoral program and was working on some stuff. And I touch on it in the preface or the intro to the book, but I was working on a book because that was when the world was going real crazy back in 2016. And everybody was, that was before the extra crazy in 2020, but
right.
but at that point,
that was like crazy 0.5. We didn't get to crazy 1.0. Yeah.
Right. We weren't quite there yet, but it was all of the trackings leading that way. And I was working on a book that was also going to be my doctoral thesis when I was accepted to the program. It was going to be about immune dysregulation and how, and I still, to a large part, believe from the physical perspective, this is very much true, but that most disease is manifestations of the same idea. It's an over or an under stimulation, or over or under stimulation to an internal external stimuli. So what that means is either something's coming from the outside in or something's coming from the inside out, and your immune system's either going haywire or is just sleeping at the wheel. So you're a firefighter, right? So it's like somebody left the candle going and didn't go and put it out, and now the fire went and spread everywhere, right? So there was an underreaction to something inside, right? So that would be cancer, right? Cancer is when we don't react properly to something happening and growing. When something comes from the outside and we underreact, that's an infection. When we overreact and it goes from the outside, that is an allergy. And if it's overreaction to the inside, it's autoimmune. All of that to say, that was my big thing, because I was like, no, this ancestral world, we evolved this way, and all that nonsense. And then I ended up coming across, the Jordan Peterson to Pajot to Dyer to everything pipeline. That was very popular. That was the first swing before the COVID people. And I learned recently that they're actually discussing that on the clergy level. There's different categories of the waves of people who came in. And so it's kind of an interesting sidebar. I'm one of those. I'm one of the symbolic world pipeline.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So
my guest last week, Kate from the Dirt Poor Robin, same exact, personal route of the Pajot.
Yep.
Okay. That's funny. So y'all are Pajot influx. I'm COVID influx.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to meet and talk to Jonathan at some point, but we're not there yet. But to that point. Yeah. So got there, everything was good, and was learning more about Orthodoxy, and was like, oh, wait. And so I was using that same idea, though, for that. My thesis was going to be turned into a book where I was comparing that to the political arena, where I was like, oh, well, we have the Antifa is the overreaction to the internal, or to the internal stimuli, and the alt-right was the overreaction to the external stimuli. And I had different levels where I was going to be blending in both science and health and just politics. And so I had this whole idea mapped out in my head. I've got about 10, 15,000 words down. And then I started looking to Orthodoxy, and I started reading Father Seraphim Rose, and I read Nihilism. And after reading, I was like, oh, this is better than anything I will ever write. And that was just one chapter of a book that he never got to complete.
Right.
And I was like, oh, okay, well, to that point, I don't think I need to write this book anymore. Because to me, it was like, oh, the solution was like we talked about last time. I threw a little shade, but the libertarian objectivist idea in me was like, we just need more conversations. we need to talk it out more. And to that point, realized that, oh no, the real solution is Christ. And kept going with that, kind of put that on the shelf, but switched my thesis to exploring the ascetic practices of the Orthodox Church. So it was our fasting practices compared to the intermittent fasting I've been doing from a secular perspective for, like I said, probably about 8 years at that point, 9 years. And then our hesychastic prayer, the Jesus prayer, compared to yoga and to mindfulness meditation and MBSR from the secular perspective, and how your primary care physician or your physical therapist will have no problem telling you to go do some yoga, but you tell them to go pray, and whoa, hold on now. And so I was looking at it from both, because my thesis itself and where I do professionally and everything else is from that physical and mental health aspect was, well, while this has a greater purpose, and that is the core, there are still physiological and mental effects. And so let's look at what we can empirically see from people who partake in those diets and prayer practices. And I was surprised when I was doing the literature review, there was a lot of research on the monks in Athos. Like there's a lot of Greeks going out there and actually doing work with them, which is kind of cool. But to that point, switched that thesis, really explored it, got it through. And at that point, I was received into the church on Elevation of the Cross in 2019. And my my doctoral thesis didn't actually fully get through until 2020 in the middle of that. And the world went to hell. And I was just like, what do I do now? I'm pretty new to the faith. I realized afterwards that I was reading things way above my pay grade, Pathology in particular, and citing that for my thesis.
Yeah.
And well, I really don't want to go out there and promote Orthodox health on a wide scale yet, but I also can't go back to the evolutionary ancestral framework. Like, yes, we can talk about just eating real foods and stuff like that. And that was my core what I did with people I was working with in that window. And then in the last year, my co-host John and I over on the Orthodox Health Podcast, what happened was John and I have known each other for, at this point, almost 16 years. And we'd been talking about health and martial arts and everything for years and years. And I slowly dragged him along to Orthodoxy. And on his journey, our wives were just like, you guys are always talking about health and Orthodoxy. And, you wanted to do this, Mike. You want this to be your thing. At that point, I'd been in the faith for 6 years, like received. And it was like, all right, maybe now's our chance. And so we got our blessings from our priests and started the show. And I wanted to be on the record that Buck was the very first person to comment regarding the release of the show. I announced, like, before the show even dropped, I put a post up, was like, hey, which ended up becoming our sounder reel at the opening of all the episodes. And I put that out, and Buck was the very first person to come in. I didn't know him from a hole in the wall besides watching some of your shows. We didn't know each other, and he's been phenomenal ever since. So glory be to God for you, Buck. I appreciate you.
Thanks. Yeah. How cool. Okay. And so then, it's funny. You were like, well, I don't want to mix Orthodoxy and health and start talking about that to the world yet. And here you are now doing exactly that. I love all of that. I have so many places to go. Do you think, this seems a bit of a softball, but I think I know the answer would be yes, but I want to know, to go deeper from your perspective, do you think modern medicine sort of is almost like a Band-Aid that we cover the symptoms, I suppose, without going to the root of the issue? Does that seem like what Big Pharma is based upon?
Without question. And it's one of those where, depending on how deep down the rabbit hole, how spicy you want to go on that, without question.
We can get spicy.
Well, you want to go to the canyons of Trollo, there's one area there. But that's one. But so that was where, again, everything that happened in my life when it came to health, every step of the way always built off of something that expanded and made more sense once I came to Orthodoxy, where contextualized each of those things. And I know I've heard you say it before, I've said it 1,000 times, where I don't think I would have been ready for it at any point earlier than when I saw it, when I found it. It was God's timing, and each of the things brought me there a little piece of the way. And so, real big rewind, back when I was a kid, I had asthma so bad that 7 different doctors misdiagnosed me with cystic fibrosis. Now, I'm old enough that it was basically just a symptom test back then. It's like, oh, his lungs are pretty bad. Now, they do the heel prick and everything else, and like those genetic testing for it. I've since found out that no, I don't have cystic fibrosis or anything, even any genes approximating it. So it's really bad asthma. And so was really sick growing up. And then my dad got into the natural medicine, like I said, and I grew up that way. And having gone through all of that rabbit hole, started learning about the Flexner Report and how the Rockefellers took over medicine. And it's one of those where in the event of emergency care, I think it's phenomenal. I think break the bone. Me personally, I'm probably still not, because I'm just a complete weirdo. I tore my bicep a couple months ago and never even got it checked out. But we're good. We're attached now. I trained jiu-jitsu, never even missed a day. But my arm was completely pitch black. It was wild.
Yeah.
But all of that to say, for the most part, it's let's stitch you back together and get you back out there, and without actually getting to the root cause. And that was something that I appreciated, first from the natural end, then to the ancestral end, and then I got real big into the gut health and immune regulation that way. And every level of that was getting more to the root. And then eventually I found, Christ is the true physician. And yes, there are times where the physical modalities are going to be important. Even Christ used dirt to clear the eyes at least one of the times, right?
Yeah.
And so there's an idea of we are physical and spiritual beings. We're not falling to the Gnostic heresy that we're just a spiritual thing and Jesus is going to fix it all and we're going to lay hands on you and all that, But to that point, it's a yes and we're called to be those co-workers. So there are times that the physical things, they are bound to those rules of, the logi are being maintained by the logos, by Christ himself. So those things are there. There's order to this world, not because of some random events, but because he maintains them. So we can understand that. That's what science should be directing towards, is trying to understand the things we can influence and praying that we have the right guidance there, both to make the right choices there, but also trust in him enough that some people, they get those miraculous healings where it's just spontaneous. I don't know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
We do. So,
mm-hmm. Is there a lot of, let's say, sicknesses and physical ailments that you think are rooted in being spiritually sick, I suppose?
Yeah, I definitely do. How far you want to go in terms of defining mental versus spiritual illness, it's, that's a very big debate.
Yes.
And there's a lot of discussion on that. And it's just one of those where even if we take the more secular idea of, this is just biochemical issues that are overthrown, I still honestly believe that the unseen realm, those demonic powers, are still able to poke and prod and interact in that way. Maybe because you are intoxicated, or maybe you have some kind of neurotransmitter imbalance. You have chemical imbalance that way. That's an area where they can go in. You hear all the times about the entheogens and all the hallucinogenics type stuff, and you cross over the veil and you're seeing into that other side. I do think that we're going into that noetic realm there. And so things that are mind altering, I do believe, because we are composite beings. We're not just body. We're not just soul. Anything that interacts with one is going to have effects on the other. Where that delineation is, I'm not a priest. I'm not holy enough to tell you the answer to that. But I definitely do believe, and it's one of those where you see it, right? I mean, that was a big thing for me, is that God-sized hole in the heart. You see the people who are beholden to different ideologies in various stripes. I'm not going to beat the cudgel on any of them, but the point is, all those isms, every one of them, you start to see it, whether it's in their eyes or in it's just sickness. It is like it's beyond mental. The girl screaming at the clouds when Trump was elected, and it's like, or anything else. It's not even just that. It's just cases of where you see like there's something wrong here, and it's definitely more than just the body. But the body being out of whack is going to cause or open yourself up more to it as well.
Yeah. On a secular level, you could almost say it like the analogy would be someone who's got depression, then they gain weight, then they get diabetes, then they get sick. And it's all started with some sort of, in the secular world, let's just, for people, it started with something up here. Maybe from our perspective, it starts from something in the noose.
Exactly. And to that, it's interesting, right? So the word pathology that we use to describe the generation and the continuance of illness, right? It comes from pathy or pathoi. We don't want to be pedantic about the Greek. That right there is the root word for the passions. So the passions are your sicknesses that are happening. So there's a lot of analogy to be made between physical sickness and the passions. And there's a lot of direct correlation where the passions are coming on you for gluttony, for acedia, which is depression, despondency, for lust, for any of those things. There is a physical component and there is a spiritual component. And to that degree, right, what is one of the biggest ones for lust we'll use? It's to fast. And it's like, well, how does that even make sense? Well, the food, yes, the passions there, it's creating temperance, creating discipline. That's one level. There's the biochemical level of, I'm not eating as much meat, so I'm not getting as much zinc. And so I'm not getting as much fat. So my cholesterol levels are going to be lower. Or all of that combined are going to reduce your hormones and potentially reduce your libido. And so, there's a physiological component. There is the mental component of discipline, and there's the spiritual component. And so every level works together. And so it's not an either or. All of it is holistic in the true sense of the word.
We've got a new sponsor. It is Perfect Spiral Capital. This is the infinity banking concept. Break free from the system. Perfect Spiral Capital helps you build wealth on your terms, outside of the control of the corporate banking cartel and the state-manipulated markets. Invest like a dissident, a true dissident. Take ownership of your financial future with strategies designed for those who refuse to be cogs in the machine. No handouts, no bailouts, just real results. Opt out, build wealth. The state inflates your savings away while Wall Street rigs the game. You guys know this. Perfect Spiral Capital helps you stack real assets and create lasting independence. Go to perfectspiralcapital.com/counterflow and get a special offer for fans of this show. Again, that's perfectspiralcapital.com/counterflow. Yes. Yeah. I love that about Orthodoxy, how it's like the complete whole vision we're talking about. You remove a few pieces here and there and you're in disorder, basically.
Exactly.
And Father Turbo once said on one of his episodes of The Royal Path, I believe, you show me a young Orthodox man who's addicted, or woman, I suppose, who's addicted to porn, and I'll show you one who doesn't fast properly.
Right.
So I think that's sort of what you're getting at there. Today's health problems, let's say, compared to 500 years ago, what's the difference that we're seeing?
So, I mean, even 500 years ago, even in the West, where, you and I would believe that we've lost Christianity in the truest sense of the word, there was still at least some kind of reverence for God. That's a major part of it. And that plays itself out both in the internal psyche and how we're able to interact with the world, but also the choices we make with the world. If you don't really believe that you're called to be a true steward to the earth, you don't care about polluting heavy metals and PCBs and all this stuff into the water. You don't care about spraying thing in the sky. You don't care about adding, a whole bunch of rancid seed oils and Red 40 and all the things to the food supply. You don't worry about the hormonal birth controls and antidepressants that are ending up in the water supply and all of that, those levels. You don't really care as much because who cares? The world's pretty meaningless and doesn't matter. So I think that's one level. I think that whole Nietzschean idea of, God is dead, we killed him, that God-sized hole is creating just massive depressive and anxious things. And those didn't really exist because back 500 years ago, either you were living in the castle or you were fighting your war or you were working in the field. And you really didn't have time to worry about that. You just trusted in God for everything you had there. So for me, it's multiple levels of ways we've destroyed the earth, ways we've destroyed what it is we're putting into our bodies itself. Most of the things aren't even classifiable as food. And as a addendum to that, that's something that I'm very personally passionate about when it comes to the fast, is that I see way too much of the Franken foods. And while I will use there's a Miyoko's butter, which is basically just coconut oil and some salt and some things, and it tastes scary like butter. It's entirely too close for me, almost for comfort. But those, or some like sour creams. There's another brand that I like. I'm blanking on it right now, but whatever. Those I'm a little bit more okay with. But when it starts getting into the cheeses and the meats, it's the chemical firestorm that most of them are. It's no good. And then there's the debate whether it's the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. And the letter of the law, you're following it, but are you really participating in the spirit of the fast on that? Right.
We're almost getting, which is why we read, I believe you guys talked about this with Father Zachariah Lynch, the publican and the Pharisee stuff, as we sort of get into Lent. And it's like, well, I kept the fast. And now you could be a Pharisaical Orthodox Christian saying, I kept the fast so great. I had Beyond Meat burgers. They're not real meat, Exactly. And it's like, wow.
Right. And at that point, honestly, I'd say, and Lord forgive me, take it to your spiritual father, but I'd say you're probably better off just eating meat at that point. If you are so beholden to the flavor of the meat that you need to have that during the fast, you're probably better off having the meat and confessing it at the end.
Yes.
Because there's something going on both in your behavioral, so both your mental and your spiritual capacity that you can't manage without that. And to that point, on the flip side of that, if I go to coffee hour and during the potluck, someone decided to bring a spaghetti dish with some kind of those fake meatballs, I'm probably going to try and avoid that if there's other things available. But if that's the only thing that's there, or the person's standing right there, like offer, like, hey, you have this. And it's like, okay, I'll probably pick around it a little bit, but I'm not going to lose any sleep that I had a bad food, because the hospitality to me is more important. And the stress, that's a big one too, is that stressing out over the foods is an even bigger health problem than the food itself.
Mm-hmm. Before we get people accusing us in the comments, so nothing, medicine doesn't work at all, huh? Let's talk. I want to ask you about modern medicine.
Yeah.
You kind of alluded to it earlier. There are instances where, yeah, of course you would need something like that. We're not just Amish or something where we don't do anything at all. But talk about the instances where modern medicine would be appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if someone breaks their leg, someone has a heart attack, in that immediate acute phase of care, honestly, it'd be more like something that you'd be more in line with in terms of the first responder care. The initial phases, I'm very much on board with. Beyond that...
Oh, good. Me too, ironically.
Yeah, absolutely. So beyond that, most of the things that are happening, while they may be good in the short term, we see too many, whether it be the opioid addiction crisis, whether it be the antibiotic resistance crisis, whether it be the statin crisis, where we're melting the brains of the elderly and largely contributing to the neurological issues, the Alzheimer's, the Parkinson's. All of those diseases are not exclusively. There's, the aluminum buildup, which is still our fault, but the loss of cholesterol in the brain is a major contributing factor to all of those. So the reductions, or the blanket reductions of cholesterol through the use of statin drugs, is a major problem there. And they also are going to break down the pathway for the production of CoQ10. So I will give the modern medical model credit for that. They generally will insist that you take CoQ10 if you're on a statin, but most people don't necessarily follow that. And the reason why it's super important is CoQ10 is part of your heart, you're part of your muscles. Yeah. It's a vital component that you need to live. So what's ironic is you're taking the statin to lower your risk of heart disease, but you're also destroying CoQ10, which in and of itself is an independent risk factor for heart disease. So you are biting off your nose to spite your face.
Yes.
And so to that point, a lot of it ends up becoming pharmaceutical whack-a-mole, where you take one thing to take another. Right. That knocks down this one, so maybe I won't take this one now. And we see that way, way, way too much.
Yes, there's literally, I saw, it's been a couple of years now, but I was like, you got to be kidding me. Opioid-induced constipation pills, because we all know pain pills constipate you. And so you take the pain pills to ease the pain. Now we've got a new pill for when you're constipated. It's like, goodness, where's the root of the pain?
Right.
Stop piling on stuff and let's go find that part. Has modern science, do you feel that it's caught up? Or maybe it's definitely not caught up. I shouldn't say it that way. Is it looking into things that the church has practiced for centuries?
Yeah. And so on certain aspects of that, absolutely. And that was the big driving force for my thesis, was that we're looking at this intermittent fasting. We are looking at breathing techniques and prayers in the sense of the mantras and everything. It's not completely analogous. I was very clear on that in my thesis. I try to be as clear as possible in the book, and I'm very clear about that in general. The Jesus prayer is not a vain repetition, it is not a mantra, but from a superficial level, you are still doing a repetitive breathing process, a repetitive invocation there. The difference is that we actually believe that we are calling on the name of our Lord, but it's still physiologically going to have the same effects. Well, without getting too deep in that one, I do believe obviously God's going to have a greater effect than calling on the name of a demon. But what I mean is, if to the degree that you're going to see efficacy in terms of breath work, calling on the names of demons, you're going to see that much plus more by calling on using the Jesus prayer, and just that repetitive ability to slow it down, calm down, breathe, all of that. There's there's observable effects to your stress system, to your mental health, to all of that there. So I've encountered Christians, typically women, that do yoga. And I don't want to make this a pile on
to that. I mean, they're ubiquitous, even in my small town, yoga studios. And you often hear, if I don't get into the spirit, quote unquote, spiritual aspect of it, I'm stretching, I'm breathing. And I think what you're sort of putting forth here is like, well, we have a version of that too.
Yes.
So you can actually do the breathing. If you want to, you can do the stretching. And the spiritual part you can take part in because it's Christ.
Exactly. You worded that 1,000 times better than I did in that little ramble. But that's exactly it for me. So John and I have a standing rule on the podcast that any priest that comes on, they are going to get asked the question of, can yoga be Christianified? And I'm pretty confident I made that word up, but that's the way I worded it the first time. And I'm just running with that ever since.
Yes.
And they understand what I mean.
Yeah.
And the answer has been unanimously no. The most diplomatic answers have been from Father Zachariah Lynch and Father Michael Butler. Father Zachariah kind of gave it a little bit of a back and forth in terms of no, definitely not from the spiritual, but I'm going to be charitable to them. Whereas Father Michael was really trying, like you said, if they really divorce the spiritual, I'm going to be super charitable. But at that point, we all agreed and come down on the same idea of once you remove that, you're just doing mobility work. And in terms of from a strength training and endurance training, just from a physical capacity standpoint, there are such better modalities to mobility work than yoga in and of itself. And if you are going to insist on calling it yoga, you have a bigger problem at hand, because yoga itself comes from Sanskrit and it means to yoke. And we are called by God to not be unequally yoked to unbelievers. And so without even getting into the fact that all of those positions are named after Hindu deities and you are presenting yourself in worship to them, you're bowing down to them in those positions. If we are so insistent that we have to call it yoga, that's probably indicative of a bigger problem, a deeper root than just, hey, I do this Warrior 3 like pose. It's a Romanian deadlift functionally because the body is designed in a certain way and you can only move a certain number of ways. They look functionally identical, but the intention is different when I'm practicing yoga versus when I'm doing it either body weight or I'm doing it with weight.
Yeah. I didn't. Okay. That's interesting. I've never been a yoga person. I'm sure that's shocking to everyone, but I didn't even know they had moves similar to, we would call them RDLs in the weightlifting circuits.
Exactly. So if you look up a single leg RDL and you look up Warrior 3, and the only reason why I even know this is because when I was younger, P90X was the thing. And
yeah, sure.
Yep. And so I had that set there and did the Yoga X. That along with working in a strength and conditioning capacity, we almost always had a yogi on staff. So the occasional messing around with that. And in the jiu-jitsu community, there's a lot of people who are into yoga. So I was always tangentially exposed to it. My alternative health side, everybody's, yoga.
Yes.
So I've always been adjacent. But in terms of actual practice, that Yoga X is about it for me. But the Warrior 3 looks almost identical. The difference is your arms are out versus down, but whatever.
It's funny how pop culture can sort of take part in something exactly like you're saying. Well, there's yogi on staff. That's fine. They're there. If there would have been an Orthodox monk on staff, normies would be like, that's I'm not getting, am I going into organized religion or something like that? Like that would really stand out to a lot of people.
Without question. And I think child pose is the one that you're on your bed. Yep. So yeah, if you look up what child pose is, it's essentially the way we prostrate when we do a full matanya. Okay. So they go the same way that is stereotypically of Islam, yet they stole it from us. But that whole just on your knees, arms out all the way. That child's pose, we do those hundreds of times.
Yeah. Especially coming up in a few weeks here, I believe.
Exactly. Yes, that's going to be the Sunday right before Lent is, I like to call it the Orthodox Olympics.
It is. Yeah, I avoid leg day right before that.
That would be a smart choice, and that's one of the. So Father John Wheeler, my priest, is he practices the economia, that the charitability to us, and has us do one full prostration, and then after that allows you to go just the half prostration and just touch the floor after that. And I have a standing rule that so long as I'm physically capable, I'm going to do the full prostration every single time. So
I see what you did there, a standing rule. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. My standing rule is I'm going to bow until I'm physically incapable of it. And if I'm still able to get on the mats, I'm clearly able to bow 50, 100. Now we're up to almost 250 at our church. So we've seen some tremendous growth, just like everybody else seems to be having. So praise God for that. But yeah, I'm looking forward, but almost not looking forward to see how many people actually show up to Forgiveness Vespers and see how many Orthodox burpees I'm going to have to do.
Yes. Let's talk the fall. That was an interesting section in the book. And again, people listening and watching, you got to get this book. There's so many things that I haven't connected. In fact, I know had I met you prior to you being Orthodox, if I was already Orthodox, this happened to a very close friend of mine, Joanna, who's on the Soil Sisters podcast. They talk about regenerative agriculture, and she kept saying certain things, and I was like, you have an Orthodox view of agriculture, basically. And now, thank God, she's baptized. So that sort of works. And I think you would have sort of had like a similar, like I would have been like, Dr. Mike, there's certain things you're saying, it's pretty Orthodox here. Come and see. But I want to talk to you about the fall, because again, that's something we don't talk too much about, especially in as regards to health and whatnot. Before and after the fall, what changed the human person? Because I want people to understand like really what it was like before.
Yeah. So that is a bit above my pay grade in terms of what life was like.
Come on, Father Michael.
Exactly, right? So if you were to ask like Father Stephen DeYoung, he's always like, what's it like to be a bat? We don't understand what it was like to be in paradise there. Having said that, that is an area why, there's big debate. Oh, can you believe in evolution? Can you not? And for me, I'm very hardline that no, you can't. And I think the biggest thing is that because it has implications for how health is understood and how medicine is practiced. You have very different paths that you can follow if you believe they were created versus uncreated, or created versus evolved, whatever. To that point, I do believe that we were made good and we are progressively degenerating because we are moving further and further away from that point. That to the degree that we have changes, adaptations, most of it is loss of ability, loss of function. But to that, that's where getting into the ages that we see in the Old Testament. How much of that is calculated differently?
Right.
I personally believe that they're literal, but whatever.
Okay.
You could call me the weird one. To that point, the fall itself obviously led to chaos and degeneration in the world, in the whole cosmos. We're told that the cosmos will be recapitulated when Christ comes again, when we are able to turn back. The whole of creation cries out to Christ to return. And so for me, if we don't believe that, then we can just go along with whatever, who cares? The world's just going to fall apart. And we have our tikkun olam, we have our call to fix the world, right? But are we actually doing that? Or are we just progressively making it worse? Whereas from a Christian perspective, we are called to be stewards of the earth, and we are called to bring it into his image. We're called to be co-workers with him and not recreate new things, but to create things to help glorify him. And so I think that we've, in the medical field, in the technology field, and all that, we've tried to supplant God and say that I can do this better than you. And that, I think, was the main, that pride is exactly what caused the fall. And Satan, when he fell, was exactly that. I was like, oh no, I know better than you. And we have that hubris. And let's be clear, that's every single one of us has it to some degree. Obviously, pride is the root of pretty much every sin. But to the degree that we have it, that is a consequence of the fall. And we are dealing with that deficit ever since.
As you guys know, the team at Podsworth Media has worked with me for a long time producing this show. A big part of that over the past couple of years has been them using their Podsworth app to make the audio sound clean, level, professional, even when the raw recordings were super sketchy, which mine can be sometimes. In fact, this one that you're listening to right now is super sketchy. I took this microphone sock off here just to show you how crappy it will sound, except when they put it through the Podsworth app, it sounds beautiful. I've got this annoying white noise maker going on. It's driving me crazy. If you want to hear how bad this recording is before they put it through the Podsworth app, you can hear the full before and after demo for yourself at the link in the description. The app recently got a huge update and it's better than ever. So good, in fact, that it can take almost any atrocious voice recordings and make it sound great. They remove background noise, it cuts down on plosives, it fixes clipping when your gain is too high, it reduces reverb, removes clicks, pops, improves tone, and the level of the dialogue is even and consistent. So if I move around like this, which I sometimes do when I get excited, it'll fix all of that. It's super simple. Go to podsworth.com, click Get Started, drag and drop your audio files, or open them right from your smartphone browser. Customize your settings if you want, but honestly, the default works great for most podcast recordings. Here's the cool part. Enter code BUCK50, BUCK50 for 50% off of your first order. No account needed, just email and payment. Then you get the download link in your inbox with your cleaned up files. It's perfect for podcasts, YouTube videos, sermons, homilies, audiobooks, anything like that you want to sound legitimate and professional. Remember, use code BUCK50 for half off your first order. And you're supporting this show. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I'll say, I think most people now live and function and sort of diagnose their medical issues as if the body and soul are separate.
Yes.
You have a section in the book that talks about when timing-wise that sort of thinking might have happened. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so that's the Enlightenment. That's, well, depending on how far back you go, there's the whole idea that all of this was the end result of the schism. That we had the schism in the East and the West, and that opened the door to the scholastics, to the Aquinan theories, to then lead into the Reformation by putting, without getting too deep into the essence energies and all of that, but the idea of God not being both transcendent and immanent, being here and out there everywhere. We're only able to see him in the beatific vision after we die. And so he's not actively participating. And so that led to the intellectual framework during the Reformation, which then led to the Enlightenment. And in that process, we started to put God out there, and here's the material world. These are the things that we can really dial in on. And if you look at the original scientists, they were the alchemists, they were the astrologers, they were practicing arts that were not differentiated. And while a lot of that was occult weirdness, a lot of it, though, was still understanding that, no, there is a spiritual and a physical component here. And so as we moved away and we put the spiritual understanding, the unseen world, into a box, and that's just over there, that allowed for much different choices to be made in the medical model. And yes, I know the pushback is going to be, oh, well, they were using leeches and they were doing this and that. And like, at the same time, today we see a lot of different ways of, oh, well, maybe someone has hemochromatosis and they actually need blood to be drawn. So what they do, they go to the doctor and they get a blood draw instead. Yeah. And it's, a lot of it wasn't so crazy if you actually understand what it was that was actually happening. They might not have understood the mechanism, but there was that practical understanding. Hey, this kind of works. It doesn't work for everything. We might have abused it in certain areas, but kind of worked. But
you guys talk a lot about disembodiment. Again, there's sections that you talk about that here in this book. I want to ask you about screens, stress, toxins, and the disembodiment effect that these things have, that we're all, we're swimming in this at this point.
And so it's that balance between hedonism and Gnosticism, honestly. It's that balance between, because God is out there and I can't touch him, or he's just not even out there, I don't believe in him at all, I need to either become my own God in my own person, or I need to transcend this body. And you see that in the transhuman movement of, I'm going to do both. And there's this silly show, your wives always convince you to watch some weird things. And there's a show called High Potential. And it's actually the girl from It's Always Sunny. So,
okay. Yeah.
yeah. So it's actually kind of cool. She's playing this consultant for detectives and they're working like the murder cases and everything. And so she's just like this high functioning, just completely at all times, sees everything, Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. Well, all that to say, the most recent episode was just that. It was a guy who was the Brian Johnston kind of idea of, I'm going to make myself into the end of the world. I'm going to make myself into the peak human through biohacking, and I'm going to advance my own body by becoming super embodied. I'm going to do every little minute thing. I'm going to track everything. I'm going to use my Aura ring and this, that, and the other. And then the twist was that he wasn't actually murdered. Sorry, spoiler alert. I doubt most of you have seen it. If you have, okay, cool. But he wasn't actually murdered per se. He had already funneled all the money out, embezzled it to put his body into a robot kind of thing. And so had done the whole, oh, well, I'm going to live forever now. And so you'll see that about even in the same types of people. Some are all in on, we're going to go and make myself that AI idea of I'm going to integrate with the machine. And other ones are, no, I'm going to make myself live forever by injecting platelet rich plasma, we'll say, from people who are younger than me.
Yeah. Y'all talk about that on that episode?
We have thrown Brian Johnson's name out there. I think one of our guests might have brought it up, and we're like, yeah. But yes, injecting the blood of other young people. Oh, my son, I'm going to take his, and I'm going to spin it around, I'm going to centrifuge it. And it's like, oh, Lord have mercy on me.
Yeah.
So all of that to say is that, yeah, there's really weird space in the health scene where it's, no, I need to prolong my body at any cost, or I need to prolong my mind, which is my soul, which is however they want to conceptualize it, at any cost. And every one of those, though, is still at root, it's a fear of death.
Yes.
And as we hear during the Paschal homily, St. John Chrysostom tells us, let no man fear death.
Yes.
And because we already know that death is overthrown, Christ God is risen. So that's the big thing. And even that's something we saw during the dark years, right? During the 2020 range. It's just a situation where everyone was so afraid of death. And that has such tremendous implications on both personal choices for individual health, whether it be taking experimental rushed procedures, or it means public health policy where everyone's getting locked down. And now we're contributing to the loneliness crisis. And it's just so many levels where it changes how health is done. And so that's another area that John and I definitely want to tackle at some point, is like a bioethics episode, and how different understandings of how health is understood change how we deliver care.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things I have a deeper annoyance with this that maybe I've let on the show, but if people watch it all the time, maybe they're going to go, no, I can tell. The ubiquitous nature of the self-help movement. Can you please talk about that in terms of what we're dealing with as far as pop culture self-help? It's all over the place on Reels and Instagram and whatnot. And relate that to the Orthodox vision of health that you guys discuss.
Yeah, and so we did a whole episode on that with my priest, Father John.
Yes, it was fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, no, he's great. And we're bringing him back on in 2 weeks or so to close out our Triodian arc for Lent. He's our Forgiveness Sunday one, because I've heard him rant about forgiveness on many occasions. So I know he's good for it. But to that point, I say this with full acknowledgement, full awareness that, I came to Orthodoxy through that Jordan Peterson pipeline. And there is an area of a lot of people just need to clean their room, bucko.
Clean your room.
Yeah, exactly. They need that ability to just turn on themselves for a little bit and focusing on themselves for a little bit to be able to just start trending in that right direction. And for me, when it comes to what we need to do, our small actionable steps, that build us onto that track, keep us back on the path, and having that discipline. But once you have that, once you start really trying to optimize myself, then it becomes that narcissistic idea, and you're becoming way too self-focused.
Yeah.
And then that leads us into philautia, is what the fathers called it, and probably butchered the Greek, but it's love of self versus self-help and self-love. It's a worse idea than just, self-love. Like, I don't hate myself. And we aren't called to hate ourselves. We're called to walk that royal path between the despondency and the philautia, between that just, I'm the only thing that matters. And that ties into that transhumanist idea, because at root, it's, I'm so afraid of dying, but also I'm the only one that matters. And so I'm going to do everything to extend my life such that I can propagate forever. Yet we are called to be immortal, but we're called to do that by procreating, by being fruitful and multiplying. We're called to bring more souls to Christ through that process, not by extending my life because of what? If we're meaningless anyway, why does it matter? Why do you want to live 400 years for just to become stardust again afterwards, man?
What happens to us when what happens physically and spiritually, we can talk, when we fast according to the Orthodox liturgical calendar?
Yeah, so we touched on that briefly before, is that the core purpose of why we fast is that we are using it to temper the passions. And so to be able to have some kind of self-mastery. And to the degree that we're successful in that, it's a wonderful tool. And in terms of just fasting in general, there are physiological benefits where that fasting process turns on, in particular, autophagy, where our cells start to eat the fluff. They eat the stuff that's a little bit that's been damaged. So we're always reproducing our cells, and we have internal systems that help to clear out the ones that have been damaged. And as those cells die, they're recycled through. But different things can either slow down that process and cause a little bit of a buildup. So that's where that autophagy comes in. And so just even from a purely secular perspective, intermittent fasting is amazing for that. When it comes to our specifics, like I mentioned before, certain foods being avoided. Now, there's the spiritual reasons for why those specific foods are. We are called to avoid things with blood, things strangled, everything. Those would be in general. But then during the fast, we go back to more that Edenic state of, no, we're not going to eat any kind of animal without getting into shellfish. That's a deeper rabbit hole. But in terms of practical, I definitely would recommend people to include as much shellfish as they can handle and afford without breaking your budget. Let's put it that way. So if it's going to be the difference between you being able to be charitable to your neighbor and having that shrimp every night, yeah. But if you're in a position where you can be incredibly charitable and also afford the shrimp, definitely. If nothing else, a little bit of oysters, like once a week, twice a week, would be a good starting point. But all of that to say, our fasts, they're able to induce a physiological state where that we are clearing out the junk, clearing out the clutter, but also clearing our mind so that we can be directed back towards Christ. And so there's something to be said for being a little bit hungry, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are too used to convenience in this world. And to that degree, we just go reaching for food mindlessly and we don't even think about it. And that's a major contributor beyond just all the stuff that's wrong with the food system itself. Just from a behavioral aspect, we are tying into the screens idea, and we'll have no problem throwing on TV and I'm just going to mindlessly eat this bag of chips, or I'm going to eat this popcorn or whatever. And there are signals. So food, there's a whole food science that has been developed to purposely hotwire is what I was looking for. Hotwire our nervous system signals. So when you combine a food that is salty, fat, and sweet, all three of those will hit triggers that will cause you to eat more individually or in combination. Individually, if you try to eat a stick of butter, you're probably not going to get too far.
Right.
If you try to eat a pound of sugar, you're probably not going to get too far. A pound of salt, you're not going to get too far. But once you start combining those, it actually just trips up our our hormonal and our neurotransmitter signaling that you can eat more because there's salt and there's sweet and they shouldn't all be in one idea all the time. In a single meal, sure, if it's part of your actual meal, but there's going to be diversity on that plate. But in those isolation snacks, that's where it usually becomes a problem. So all of that is the behavioral aspects. We are too hyper-focused on other things, and we end up. So Father Michael Butler, we just dropped that episode on the prodigal son, and he said how the prodigal wasted his inheritance. And the word, though, I'm probably gonna butcher it on that one too, but it was diascorpizo was the Greek word that's used there. And what that word actually more accurately translates out to is to scatter. And so when our mind is scattered, when we're disintegrated, when we're disembodied, but we're focusing on too many different things at once, whether it be those traits, everything else, it pulls us apart both physically and mentally. And so we are focused on that. We're not thinking about what we're actually eating. Whereas when we fast, there's that intentionality. There's the idea of, no, I'm going to have a tighter window. And again, that has physiological effects, but no, I'm going to have that tighter window. I'm going to be more disciplined, more regimented. I'm going to have that control and not just randomly shove things in my mouth.
Yes. Yeah. You can extrapolate a lot from what you just said. I'm picturing just general society. I want to ask about the gut health stuff. That's a huge problem going around. It's very common. And talk about the gut as a temple and gut health and the stuff you guys write about here, or that you write about here in this book.
Yeah, and so that was an area that was a big passion of mine before becoming Orthodox. I've long been a proponent that the microbiome, that's a major driver of your health, because the gut bacteria, and that's the popular version, but we have bacteria on our skin, in our body, everywhere. So the bacterial colonies are little biome, little world. They outnumber us at least 100 to 1 is where most estimates are at. And so if there's 1 trillion cells of you, there's 100 trillion cells of those bacteria. So they, from a purely material standpoint, make up more of you than you. And so to that degree, we as the body of Christ are no individual member of that body is Christ in himself, but we are all striving to become Christ, right? We're striving to become like Christ. We retain God's image, we lost his likeness. And so everything we do on this earth is attempting, as poorly as we do, myself, the worst, is moving ourselves towards that. And so I like to see the microbiome as an analogy, because St. Maximus tells us how there's, fractal patterns, how we are the microcosm of the macrocosm. We are the body of Christ individually. And then if we take that a step back, that microbiome, those bacteria are largely what we actually are materially, even if we don't think of it as such. And just from the physical perspective, they're an individual organ in and of themselves. You produce more serotonin in your gut than you do in your brain. And everybody thinks of as the happy hormone or happy neurotransmitter. And we produce more there. And there's such signaling. I have a gut feeling. The gut almost is a second brain, because there is that interaction through the gut-brain axis, through the vagus nerve. And so it's a situation where both theologically, I think there is tremendous. So I have the chapter on that one in the book, and one of my editors said, that's book 2. And so that's something I've been working on a little bit in the background. I want to have some moments I want to really dive deep into that, go into St. Maximus, really look at that microcosm to macrocosm idea, and then still tie in, all right, well, hey, maybe you don't want to be taking those lactobacillus strains that are in the yogurt, that are predominant ones in our gut. They are great for you, but most of them, you're not going to get any changes in your microbiome. You might get some benefits from the postbiotics, which is the big new buzzword these days. Basically, the things, the chemicals, the nutrients that your bacteria produce. So you might get some of those postbiotic benefits, but you're not going to get the actual changes in your colonies in your gut. But if you take something like bacillus strains, which those are in everything now. 10 years ago, when I was first encountering those, no one knew what those were. There was a company called Megaspore, and they were pretty much the only ones who were focusing on that. Now, pretty much every fermented or probiotic drink or anything is including at least one or two of those strains. And they are phenomenal. They don't colonize your gut, but they do help to recultivate your gut. They help to allow for the beneficial bacteria to flourish and the bad ones to die off, usually through crowding them out through competitive inhibition, but deeper rabbit hole. All of that to say is that that's kind of where my head's at. I want to try to synthesize all of that into a digestible form.
Yeah, no pun intended. Or maybe pun intended.
It wasn't at first, but as the words were leaving my mouth, I'm like,
pretty good.
Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Into a digestible form that ties all that together. So I did it a little bit in that, in the Cliff Notes version in the book as the one chapter, but I want to really blow that out.
In closing, I want to ask about, as this episode drops, Lent, it's early this year. It's coming in pretty soon here, depending on, all the calendars celebrate Lent at the same time.
Yes.
So Lent's coming soon for all of us, if you're Orthodox watching this. Give some closing thoughts on protocols for, again, we understand you discuss this with your spiritual father, but broadly speaking, some of the stuff you write about, what happens to us spiritually, physically, and in the upcoming Lent.
Yeah. And so it's one of those where there's two ways that three maybe even, that people are going to go with Lent. Either you become the publican or you become the Pharisee. To me, that's one way of looking at it, in terms of you're going to become hyper scrupulous and you're going to hyper fixate on, this had an ounce of olive oil in it and I ruined everything. And that caused them to stress out, and I'm just going to throw it all away. I think the biggest key is, if you mess up unintentionally, really don't stress about it, because the stress is a bigger issue physiologically, and talk to your spiritual father and, go to confession, deal with that in the proper channels that way. But it's not the end of the world. To be fair, you're not really confessing to your spiritual father, you're confessing to God.
Yes.
He knows, but you know what I'm trying to say is that still go through the proper channels, still follow the protocol, but don't kill yourself over that. The other end of that is people who are just going to be super lax. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do what I do, and maybe I'll give up a little bit of this. No, you still need to follow the fast. You do need to fast. If you have some kind of health condition, if you are pregnant, if you're nursing, if you have specific conditions that require greater degrees of protein, those do happen. Or you have someone who is super digestive issues where they can't break down all the roughage and the beans and the pastas and all of that. Or they can't source quality pastas, because that's a big one, is the glyphosate spray on it, the fortification with synthetic vitamins that are going to have issues to your MTHFR genes, people who have those polymorphisms, but whatever. Point is, if you can't source those and you're going to have tremendous physical effects, then there's times to talk to your spiritual father of, let's make some accommodations. But as a general rule, other than that, get in at least the baseline protein, 70 or so grams, maybe upwards, ideally, if you're someone who can actually get that in, upwards of your body weight in protein. It's just the sources are a little bit trickier if you're not doing the shellfish. I run into a lot of those people who are like, I either can't do it, I'm allergic to it. But shellfish is, the cheat code for the protein end. If you can't and you need to supplement otherwise, I see the soy going around a lot. I just cannot get behind it. I'd much rather you see you doing pea protein. That's for the people who can't do the shellfish, or otherwise around that. If you are going to be doing beans as your primary source of protein, make sure you're properly preparing them. So soaking, sprouting, fermenting them. All of those will break down some of the anti-nutrients that are going to cause issues to your gut. But again, some people's guts are too far along where it's like, well, no. All right, well, maybe we talk to your spiritual father. Maybe we incorporate in, usually fish is one of the first ones back in, then it'll usually go towards dairy. It's a discussion we had there. Some will even say, maybe even an egg, right? So you had an egg a day, or you had a couple of scoops of whey protein, or Maybe it was, because whey in of itself is a couple of steps down the ladder. So different ways of getting that protein in consultation with your spiritual father, where it's, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to get one over. I'm not trying to tie a string around town so I can pretend I'm
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I got
you. Pretend I'm still inside. Yeah.
Yes.
That's not what I'm doing. It's not trying to trick God. It's like, look, Lord, this is my cross. This illness is my cross.
Yeah.
Help me in this process. Let me try to work with you, or try to honor and worship you the way that I can and be able to commit to it. And that's especially true to people who are, whether you're a father or a mother, you have someone you need to take care of. St. Basil was very explicit on this in his long rules, that you are to fast according to your condition, your occupation, your age.
Yes.
There's a lot of different factors that come into play. And that's where, on the more important end, you have that with your spiritual father. But also, if you want to work with somebody who is knowledgeable on the health end, you put that together. You don't have to do this alone, is kind of the idea. And even the fast itself, the purpose of the fast, beyond the self-help idea, beyond the discipline and getting yourself right, beyond the physiological benefits, is that you are able to love your neighbor. That's a big part of it that gets missed out. Is just, if the money that you would have spent on food should be going, either the food itself or the money that you would have spent should be going to your neighbor, to the least of those amongst you. That's a large part of the fast, is we're taking care of them because we have less on our plate. And that would be a simple way of, all right, well, I'm going to have a little bit less today, and I'm going to allot how much that probably would have cost and put it on the side, put it on the side. And whether you physically go out and find, when we had Father Jonathan Ivanov on for our St. Nicholas episode, that was it. Like the opposite, some practical ways. Like, no, like actually go out there and maybe that guy's going to blow the money on, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. He's going to waste the money. He's not going to actually do what he's supposed to do with the money. That's not your concern. Your concern is that in that moment,
right,
you still are going to go there. And that's what we saw with the story of we didn't see with meat fair with during that gospel, Matthew 25, where it's whatever you do to the least of these, it's going to be done to you. So it's one of those where that one's super important. And so when I was tired, when I was poor, when I was naked, you didn't do that. And so it's not your place to judge that. And so all of that to say, the fast is for you, but it's for the world. And all of that is for Christ.
Yes. Amen. Let's plug away anything you'd like. Again, I'm showing a cover, the book here on the video version. Plug anything you'd like, Dr. Mike.
Yeah, so we got Orthodoxy and the Medicine of the Future is my book there. The first one, as I mentioned, I teased, there's a second one there. I also have a third one in mind. We had done a Sacred Diets arc, and we kind of touched on it a little bit of how we ended up getting to where we're at today in terms of health policy. And that's something even from my ancestral days. Oh, back in the 1800s, these crazy revivalists, they went and, whether it be the Mormons or the Seventh-day Adventists or that's a large area of how we got to our current American health policies about grains, the bottom of the food pyramid, which, yes, just got flipped and everything. Yep. But
I actually saw people, no pun intended, or maybe flipping out that they flipped that. And I was like, bro, what year are we living in? You're upset about this?
For years. Yeah, I've been waiting for that for years.
Yes.
So all that to say, that's potentially book 3. So a Sacred Diets type book where it's all these different bad theology leading to bad health policy and how that ties in. So I got ideas on mind for that one too. But that's kind of what I've been doing too, is fleshing out certain concepts through the show and then writing those through for my show notes and everything else to make them a little bit more accessible. But other than that, we have, if you want signed copies of that, I have them at the website at orthodoxhealth.com/book. Right now, it's still set to pre-orders. I need to change the copy on that. But hey, look at that. With my chicken scratch, my true doctor handwriting, right?
It is. I told him, you are a real doctor. I couldn't read that.
Exactly. So with that, I'll send out, with the bonuses. And for any of your listeners, because I haven't changed that over yet, if they want to put in, I'll give it promo code BUCK. I'll take the $20 off if they just want the signed copy. If they want the digital bonuses, they can do the pre-order price. I'll kind of just fold them in. But if they just want the book, I'll take the $20 off. That's what I plan on doing in the future.
And what's the website?
So it's orthodoxhealth.com/book. And put in promo code BUCK if you want just the signed copy of the book.
Cool. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And then,
what else you got?
If you want to work with me, same thing. If you want to, really dial it in, if you have some serious health issues, those are the ones I try to focus on more than just, I need to know what to eat during the fast. That I have the show for. I have some resources. So I have a Lenten fasting guide. It's like $10 for that. And half of that goes to my church's building fund. So you can take a look at that, get the book, or if you have more health issues that really need to be dialed in, you can work with me. And I do some one-on-one consulting. So that's over at Orthodox Health. You can book a discovery call and we'll see if we're a good fit.
Excellent. Dr. Michael Christian Kuhn, thank you, sir, for being here once again on Counterflow.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you again, Dr. Mike, for being here with us on Counterflow. I've advertised it maybe once before, but it seemed to help get a few more followers. Again, I'm not always good at advertising my own things, but here we go. I do have a Substack that I'm doing now at the urging of Dissident Media. I'm enjoying doing it, so I'm glad they urged me. buckjohnson.substack.com. I do a piece, typically, I would say it's around once a week, but at the same time, I don't want it to be a thing where I force something out. I want to aim for once a week, and if I have a topic, an idea that can just flow on pen to paper, I'm going to do it. But I've already got a few pieces up there. I also post these podcasts there as well. So go ahead and follow me if you're a Substack kind of person. Again, we've got the Telegram always going strong. Follow me on X at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. And let's see, next week, what in the world is going on with the stock market, gold, silver, the economy? Maybe there's an Orthodox priest that happens to know the ins and outs of these things. Oh, wait, there is. He is going to join us next week. Father Emmanuel Lemelson is back with us to discuss, I don't know, is this volatile, these markets? What do we do with our retirement, our pocketbooks? Can we look at this all from an Orthodox spiritual point of view? We can, and we will have Father Emmanuel Lemelson on to do just that. Oh, and go over, Father Peter Hears has a brand new episode as this one drops on a Tuesday, and just go check it out. He's got some very good news. We love Father Peter Hears on this show. He is under a bishop once again, and his church, his future parish, may be planted right here near me in Central Texas. He's got a brand new episode that just dropped as this one drops, and he's going to explain all of that to you. So go check out Father Peter Hears. Until next week, you guys have a good one. Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.
This has been